Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Beyond the Dose. I am Michelle Harrell, your host, and today I am very excited to welcome Renee Anderson, also known as Wild Oregon Girl. And Renee is Oregon born and raised. This is what it says on her website. Oregon born and raised. She's an author, artist, photographer, mental health advocate, mom, and road trip warrior. I like to call her a truth teller. And she is keeping herself busy in lots of places these days. She's active conservationist and with environmental issues. She is a mental health champion. She's advocating for underserved communities. And then, she has all kinds of creative projects going on too. So I don't know how she does it all, but I am very excited to welcome you, Renee. And Renee has a very interesting story that I personally found so much inspiration in. And I found it to be such a great example of how often our greatest struggles are actually gifts for us if we choose to open them and kind of move through them. And I thought Renee's story of her own personal, mental health journey and how she found her way to purpose through that was so inspiring and such a great example. And that's why I wanted to have her on the show. So welcome, Renee. I'll stop talking.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. I think, that truly, you said it all. I'm busy, but that's how I like to be. That's just kind of how my brain works. So, I guess wherever you want to start among that list of things that I do, let's do it.
Yeah. Well, I think it would be great if you could kind of tell our listeners a little bit about your story and kind of going back to when you first received a diagnosis that probably changed your life, right? So, yeah.
Absolutely. It's actually kind of a big week for me because it is the anniversary of that time. I had my first battle with psychosis 7 years ago next week. And really, it had started about 6 months before then and was building over time. I have a schizoaffective diagnosis. I didn't receive it until 18 months after my first psychotic episode. And when you come into schizophrenia, it can start in childhood. And if you look back at my life, I definitely had, identifiers, but it can kind of build up in your late 20s, early 30s. You might not be aware of it because it comes on so slowly, which is what happened with me. But I had some extra stressors in my life. I had a bankruptcy. I had a separation in my marriage. And those just kind of accelerated the deterioration of my mental health. And I had a psychotic episode. So I had no idea what was going on. My family didn't know what was going on. And I ended up in the emergency room, the hospital. From there, I had a 5150, which is a psychological hold for 7 days in the psych ward. I was somewhat stabilized at that point, but was released and didn't want to believe that anything was wrong. But I had all of a sudden started hearing voices and my reality was very distorted. And for the next 18 months, I was in active crisis. I tried a rehab in Oregon, which was AA based. It wasn't, it didn't offer psychological help. It was just do these worksheets, go to AA, get sober. And so that wasn't a good fit for me. So I ended up leaving the program after 2 weeks. And things just didn't get better for me. It got worse. I tried religion, I tried AA, I tried being sober. My symptoms just accelerated to the point where I made the decision to call around and find a dual diagnosis rehabilitation center, which focuses on mental health first and then addiction as a side effect of mental health. And the only facility that I found that was a good fit for me was all the way in Florida. 3,000 miles away from home. My family was very worried about me flying so far away. But I did it. I went for 30 days inpatient where I was stabilized. I was stabilized with medications, but what was most helpful for me during that time was they offered 40 hours a week of social, emotional learning and one-on-one therapy. And that really changed my life.
Fantastic. And that is crazy. Is that like one of the only ones you could find in the U.S.? Wow.
Yeah, it was really, so it was started
You would think they all would have that, right? Like it just seems like they go together.
It just makes sense, right? To take a systematic approach to healing. But no, it was rare. It was actually started as a military facility. It was started for women who experienced sexual assault in the military. And then it was opened up to men. And then 3 weeks before I went, it was opened up to civilians. Wow. So I was working with military trained therapists.
Wow. And what timing, that's like divine timing right there.
Truly.
So, okay. So then you got stable, you were there, you got the therapy, which, you credit to saving your life. How, what happened after?
So before my psychosis, to give you a little backstory, I worked in food and beverage for 15 years. I managed McMinimans, Rogue Ales. I worked for a country club, and I was very involved in theater. I was on a community theater board. And when I became a mom, I was a young mom, I became a stay-at-home mom, and I left all of that. And after managing theater and restaurants, I needed something to do with my mind. And so I started a blog called Wild Oregon Girl. So I started that in 2011, and that was hiking narratives. I had worked on it for years, but when I was in psychosis, I actually shut it all down because I knew I just didn't want to ruin my work because I was writing crazy things. And my therapist in the dual diagnosis rehab that I went to, they said, you have all of these talents. You're a photographer, you're a writer, you have this life experience, and now you have this story of hope and recovery. You need to reopen Wild Oregon Girl, and you need to share. And so they helped me to set healthy boundaries around social media and create a plan. And I reopened the account on the plane ride home. And this was in late 2019. So
I can imagine that takes a lot of courage at that point, right? You're feeling better, you're feeling healthier, you're feeling stable, but at the same time, I mean, were you nervous to do that at that time? Because I can imagine going back out and being public about it is that's very vulnerable.
Yes, I didn't tell my my recovery story outwardly for another 2 years, but I went back to writing about hiking and nature and healing. I spoke about healing, but I didn't say necessarily that I had a diagnosis. I didn't feel comfortable with that because I've been very isolated while I was in crisis, and I lost a lot of friends, a lot of credibility, a lot of trust in my personal circle because I was crazy. And going through so much, it was hard, and I had felt so isolated and alone. But when I went into therapy and when I was inpatient, I had a community again. And I think that really helped me to heal the most, is to have other people to talk to and relate to and to have friends. And so my therapist told me that I could find that community online. And so that's what I was really looking for in opening that account again, was to connect to other people, but in a healthy way.
Right.
And really immediately I did find support and help. People just naturally found me and started chatting with me, talking to me. And it was before the pandemic
Sure.
happened.
Yeah.
But really during that time is when I found a lot of hope and community. So a month after I got out of rehab, my husband broke his back
Oh
and
no.
he was almost paralyzed.
Oh my gosh.
So like a month to the day that I came home, he was in an accident. And so we went through that. And then 3 months after that, I broke both of my arms. And
Oh
that
my
was
gosh, Renee. You
so
guys had
it was
wow.
just boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
And the day I broke both of my arms, I came home. Well, we went to the ER and they were doing COVID drills. And we had no idea what even
Yeah.
that was. And I came home and there was an email from our child's school. It's 2 weeks to slow the spread. We're closing down school. So that was March 12th.
Right.
And so that really, it just shut everything down. And I had my arms like this. But what I had was this community in my blog that I had reopened
That's
up.
amazing. Yeah. And I mean, I think that is what we all turned to during COVID, because that was the only space we had to communicate. I did a lot of Zoom calls and Zoom happy hour calls and Zoom book club, right, with my girlfriends and my community. So yeah, that's that. Yeah, it's not always bad, right?
Right. Like, I mean, in the pandemic, we can look back now that it's been 5 years, and see the good that came from that, like slowing down,
Yes.
taking the time to work on our hobbies and our skills, and to be so in a place that we were scared and there was so much uncertainty that we did have to reach out to one another and say, help me.
Yeah, yeah. And no, 100%. I feel like COVID really helped put a magnifying glass on whatever was going on in your life, good, bad, all of it, right? And I think that collectively, a lot of us are still dealing with, PTSD from COVID, quite frankly, or collective burnout or whatever you want to call it. But I think, a lot of us, myself included, it was during that time when it was like I was forced to be still with myself for the first time. I couldn't overschedule myself, that was my thing always, since especially after my divorce or separation. I just kept myself busy on the weeks that my kids were not with me. God forbid I would stay home alone. So, for me, it was also really good and like forcing me to look at some things in my life that I needed to look at. So I happen to also know, because you and I chatted offline a little bit, that you also found your way to psilocybin at some point during your journey. And I would love for you to share your experience there, because, we talked a little bit just before we hit record, Renee and I, as part of my psilocybin training in Oregon. We were taught that schizophrenia is one of the knockout questions for intake. So basically, if anybody has any kind of schizo diagnosis, we're not allowed to take them on as a client. And so I was fascinated when I learned that you had found that. And we are by no means promoting that out there, just to say that out loud for everybody. This is a very delicate balance between who may be able to use it and who may not. And I would, definitely encourage anyone out there that is curious to learn more to do your research and work with a physician and work with a trained individual in this space. But yeah, after saying that, I'd love to hear your experience and share that with our listeners.
Yes, it should be taken with extreme care. Had I not been stabilized prior, it wouldn't have been successful. It would have taken me to another level that wouldn't have been safe.
And honestly, sorry to interrupt you, but I just wanted to say, honestly, that's true for anyone. When I am having, calls with potential clients, for instance, if I don't feel this person's in a stable place, and they're feeling, desperate or, whatever those outward signs are, I often suggest that they wait a while, because really to do psilocybin, you should be in a stable place before even embarking on that kind of solution. So, yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, everything. I have to go very carefully because of my diagnosis. And how far gone I was, and how far I've come. So I work with a psychiatrist directly, and I have a therapist. And we do, in the beginning, when I first got out of rehab, we did check-ins every 3 weeks. And we did check-ins with my husband and my mom as well. So there were extra outside eyeballs on me. It wasn't just my personal, how I'm feeling. So I did this with a lot of supervision and a lot of care. I put 18 months into the pharmaceuticals that I was on, and I was stabilized through that, but I had a lot of really, really bad side effects. So I gained a lot of weight. I had tardive dyskinesia. I had sleep apnea. I was still dealing very much with PTSD from psychosis. So waking up screaming, horrible nightmares. I had lost a lot of memory, and I had lost a lot of ability to write. And so psilocybin, I had been on meds for 18 months, and then I tapered off with the help of my psychiatrist. Then I was med-free for 2 years after that, and still dealing with these side effects. And that is when psilocybin appeared in my life at a magical time in Oregon. And I decided to try just an itty bitty bit. And I had been on a drug called gabapentin for a long time. I was prescribed it off label for schizophrenia to manage anxiety, but it gave me horrible depression. And psilocybin immediately lifted that heavy iron weight that was just on me. And I felt childhood joy for the first time since before psychosis. And I realized that this is something that I could use in moderation and very carefully. So I connected with a woman who I trusted with microdosing, and I actually filmed my journeys myself because I did them alone, but I did them in my bathroom, and I turned on a video camera and I talked myself through my journeys. So that I could be able to go back and see what came out, but also share them moving forward in case somebody wanted to see what that was like. What is it like to see someone who has been through psychosis, through traditional medications with it, and then what did that look like using holistic plant medicine as well? So I did like 3 big journeys where I was able to release a lot of the trauma that happened from psychosis. And then I went on a very small microdosing regimen. So like a 0.5 gram capsule is what would be suggested. I open that up and just do a little, and that, and that's enough for me to feel the effects, because I am very sensitive to, like I said to you off the record, it opens me to these realms, and where I do hear voices and guidance, and I had to be very comfortable with those voices and that guidance prior to trying psilocybin, which I had tried it in my youth recreationally 20 years ago. That's a completely different experience.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, a lot of my clients, they're like, I did it once in college when I, but that was 35 years ago or whatever. So
Yeah. And very, very unregulated, very
yeah.
uncontrolled. But what I found from those, from microdosing was all of a sudden I could remember names again. I could start to write again. And that it started to erase a lot of the really bad side effects that I had from the medications I was on.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing. I think that's, I had not read or heard about anyone with your diagnosis doing that. So it's just fascinating to me. And hopefully there's someone out there listening who thinks this is a great research project. I think it would be interesting to see more research in this space. So coming out, you get back in touch with your creative side, you're writing again, you're feeling stable. So talk us through how you have really used that to kind of drive your purpose in life, and what are you doing these days? Because I know you're doing lots.
Yes. So through this crazy social media platform, Wild Oregon Girl, mostly just on Instagram, I don't pitch to anybody. I just let people find me, like how you found me. People have come to me, especially once I started to open up and share my story of recovery, of having schizoaffective disorder. They come to me and they ask me for resources and help. And I share, my experience, how I found help with dual diagnosis rehab, and what helps me, which is, taking care of my everyday basics, my sleep, my nutrition, moving, having healthy boundaries, all of that. So I share all of that. And then all of these opportunities come to me. So I work with a lot of travel boards around the state. I go around and show off lots of places. And then during 2020, one of my personal goals was to support small business in Oregon, because so many were being shut down, affected by lockdowns. People, couldn't get out to restaurants and stuff. So I made it my point to go and support small businesses, food carts. And so I made lots of friends, and then more businesses started to call me. And then as I wrote more, wrote on my blog, I got to write for Travel Oregon, and just more opportunities came to me. And now I'm working with several different nonprofits to help benefit Oregon, because part of my recovery was service to others. So if I put myself into helping others, into work outside of myself, then I don't have a whole lot of time to go into fantasy worlds that don't exist, or just, anxiety or spiraling, because they say, what you love plus helping others is your purpose.
Exactly. I mean, that's my I'm going to do a whole solo episode on my philosophy and advice to find purpose, but it starts with being in service to others. That's exactly what I believe as well. So, because where we source our greatest joy is typically when we see that in another person, right? And when it's reflected back. And if you can feel like you're part of helping someone to, improve their life or whatever it is, I think that's why we're here, just to serve each other and to love each other, right? Yeah.
Truly, yeah. There's so much healing in that. I mean, I can have all the nice compliments in the world. That doesn't really matter to me. But if somebody sends me a message and says, I went on this hike because of you, and that made a difference, I got out of the house, or I tried something new, or, I mean, I have messages, I'm alive because of your story. And that type of stuff is just, I screenshot all of those and I save them. And then, I'll sit down and cry, because there was a time when I thought, I wasn't going to make it. I wasn't going to be able to move forward. So to know that just by telling my truth and really not doing much more than that, it helps others. It doesn't have to be this big, grand gesture. It can just be speaking what happened to you and letting your voice carry that message forward.
Right. And, that we all have our gifts. If you're, an accountant and you're good with numbers, you can still be in service to others and use your talents. Right. So I think that's the beautiful thing about it, is when you tap into that, that's when, and I loved what you said, you just started going out and trying to highlight local businesses and communities, and then opportunities started coming your way. And that is what, again, I feel like alignment brings abundance, right? When we're out of alignment with ourselves, or, with our values and our truth, life feels hard. It's like an uphill battle. It feels much harder than it needs to. And when you're aligned, it just flows. Things just, open for us.
Yeah. If it's easy, it's meant to be, if you have to push against that door, it's probably not for you.
Exactly. 100%. Love that. So how do you so you talked a little bit about, the different things that you're writing and blogging about and talking about on social media, but how do you maintain balance and health and wellness today? What are some tips you can give our audience?
Yeah, I have a pretty strict daily routine, which was set for me when I was in dual diagnosis rehab. We had a schedule and we stuck to it, and I really did get out of that. I mean, it was military, right? So, you wake up, you drink water, you kind of set your intentions for the day. I sit down, I have my coffee, I defrost, as I call it, kind of like thaw out, look at what I need to do for the day. And then I get to work. I have a little alarm set. By 9 every single day, I work on social media for a couple of hours, and then it's getting up and doing chores and moving my body. And then I do school stuff because I have a almost 16-year-old. And then in the afternoons, it's going to the gym, and then it's preparing dinner, and then it's a little bit more work. And then we start our getting ready for bed. And I've got an alarm set to make sure I'm in bed by a certain time so I can get sleep. I don't sleep well. I mean, anyone with a schizoaffective diagnosis could probably tell you sleep is fleeting. But just trying to stick to that routine. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect. You have to have a lot of grace for yourself and forgiveness, because that's the whole thing, is we're not perfect. But really,
and life happens, right? I mean, life happens. Your kid might get sick, or things happen that are going to throw off your plan.
My kid is sick right now, actually. But that's okay. That's life. But just sticking to those routines, knowing my boundaries, like what is good for me and what's not. I was completely sober for several years as part of my recovery. And now I know I can have a couple of drinks, but any more than that is going to affect my sleep, which is going to affect my attitude the next day. I'm going to feel sad. And so just really having those boundaries in place for what's healthy for me. And those are written out really clearly in a little binder that I have. So just sticking to those things and taking everything one little itty bitty bite at a time, because things can feel really overwhelming and really big. But if you just take it little bit by little bit, and if you fall down, just get back up. And I try to have really clear communication with my partner, my husband, Dave, and my family about where I'm at realistically each day. I say very clearly, I'm not having a good day, because sometimes I just don't have good days. I'm really sensitive to news cycles and to other people. And sometimes a troll will get me on social media. And
you're still human, right?
Yeah. So I'm just really clear. Hey, I'm having a bad day. day. And then I kind of have a list of emergency things to tap into. I really lean into aqua therapy. So just getting into a hot bath or getting into a hot tub. I'm a member at a gym that has a pool. So that helps me, just trying to remember that I have a list of things that can help me. I have a list of people that can help me. And if all else fails, go to bed and put on a heating pad and drink some water and try and sleep it out.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And I love that you have like your wellness kind of structure, daily structure, and then you have this wellness emergency plan. I feel like all of us need a wellness emergency plan. I'm going to think about mine because sometimes, when we get so overwhelmed or, it's hard to make decisions in that space. It's if you're in fear or rage or whatever it is, it's difficult to think clearly and find clarity. So having a little cheat sheet, I think, is a great idea for all of us. Figure out what works for you, and then, it makes that moment easier when you can just, okay, let me scan my list and listen to what my body needs right now, right? So
yeah,
love that.
Yeah,
Great
and
tip.
thanks. Actually, that came from rehab. They had us
Okay.
do something called a rap sheet, which is something they do in the military. That has a little list of like, this is what looks good for me, like good healthy behaviors. These are what are my dangerous behaviors, like where I start to see myself slip. And then this is my action plan if I start to see these behaviors. And it's actually a little piece of paper that you can carry in your wallet. And
That
then it
is
also
amazing.
it has emergency stuff on the back too. So like if I were to go into crisis, I could hand that to somebody. I mean,
Oh,
even though if you're in
nice.
crisis, you might not
Yeah.
be in that headspace, but even just writing those things out and putting that in your brain, it really helps to just know, like, here's my
Immediate
plan.
grounding. Yeah, it's like helps ground you immediately. Love that. I mean, I think we should make those for our kids too. Like,
Yeah,
honestly,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Wow, fantastic. Well, so are there any I know you have a guidebook coming out. I saw that and I'm excited about that. I'm a huge travel's like my number one passion, which is how I discovered you in the first place. I started following you years ago on my personal Instagram page because I love travel. And I was new to Oregon and I loved, how much I mean, you focus a lot on Oregon. So that was why I started following you. But what other projects that you might want to share with our audience? Or are there ways that our audience can get in touch or get involved with some of the nonprofits that you're working with?
Yeah, I'm working with Oregon Shores Conservation Coalition, which is an alliance of a bunch of different groups all along the Oregon coast. So NOAA, the King Tides Project, conservation for estuaries, otters, whales, and I post and repost all of that's happening on the coast because that's my happy place. So I always like to mention them. You can follow along Oregon Shores Conservation Coalition. I work with Oregon Coast Aquarium to raise funds there. They're actually trying to make a puffin license plate.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, we need 3,000 people to sign up for the DMV to improve it, and we've got about 2,000 people signed up. So
All right.
that's like $60 through Oregon Coast Aquarium, and all those proceeds go to benefit the animals and the research that happens there, which is awesome.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm working with the Royal Rosarians. They are the official greeters of Portland, and they put on the Portland Rose Festival.
Okay.
And we're doing an auction and a benefit, and all of those proceeds go to benefit inner city youth. So that is really cool. You can donate to that or just go to the Rose Festival and support them. And I'm working with Oregon Humanities this year. I don't know what I'm doing with them yet. And then also the Oregon Garden Foundation in Silverton.
Yeah.
So
You are a busy woman.
yes.
I don't know how you do it all. Seriously.
It keeps me out of trouble. That's what
Yeah.
it is. Because if I can, I found that if I use this overactive active brain to help others and just keep going, I feel great, and I don't go back to a place where I'm in crisis and dysfunctional. So.
Right. Well, and when you're living your purpose out loud, it doesn't feel like work, does it? Like
no.
Yeah. It's like you get excited, you're motivated, it's joyful to come to work. That's how I feel. So I get it.
Yeah, every day's great, and the travel doesn't hurt, either.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm envious of that. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Renee. I have enjoyed getting to know you more and meeting you today. So thank you. And thanks for, coming on and being a guest. It was very gracious of you. I know you're busy, so thank you for your time. And for our listeners, if you want to follow Renee, you can find her at Wild Oregon Girl on Instagram, and wildoregongirl.com is her website. So and I got to say, I was looking at her website, in preparation of this, for this episode, and just got lost in your blog stories and dreaming about all the places I'd like to go visit in Oregon. So fantastic resource for anyone planning a trip to Oregon, or if you're in Oregon and you're looking for new places and off the beaten path little gyms. Renee is your go-to. Check her out.
Thank you, Michelle. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. And for our listeners, that was another episode of Beyond the Dose. Thanks for listening. We hope that today was inspiring for you, and I hope that there are people out there that this episode will help to find their own way through their healing and to their purpose. And stay tuned, because next week's episode I'm also really excited about. I'll be meeting with Ann Hamilton from the Survivorship Collective, which is an organization working to raise funds to send women with breast cancer to psilocybin retreats. So I'm really excited to talk with her as well. So thanks, everybody. And thank you again, Renee, and have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.